side, statistically that means that about 3/4 of your workforce are disengaged. In some cases, I think you could break that down to about 52% are not engaged, 18% are actively disengaged. So what's the so what in this scenario? Gallup has determined that on an annualized productivity basis, companies in the United States are losing between $450 billion and $550 billion annually, solely directed towards the folks that are considered disengaged. And again, we've all kind of experienced that in our work areas, and so it's something to kind of think about and personalize. Yes, we do. And so why you all are here is because you all play a really important role in this space. As leaders of organizations, of companies, essentially your role is to kind of make sure that people understand what the direction and the goals are, right? By quick show of hands, how many here have what you would consider a robust engagement plan for your teams?
Do you know what engagement is?
Indeed. And so these are things that you want to consider. For example, there are a number of things that we'll talk about later on in the program as it relates to certain opportunities or ways in which you can actually do that. But I'll just end here by saying engagement is an important thing. You need to be intentional about it. You want to make sure that you have an actual vision or plan that's written down that people buy into. And you want to make sure that you have the tools that can help you get to that place as it relates to quality engagement.
Thanks. Great. Sherry? Yeah, I'm up. Good morning, everyone. I know many of these faces in this room from other chamber events. My name is Sherry Taylor, and I own Fulcrum HR Consulting in Oak Park, right next door, Illinois, for those of you that are on Facebook Live. And my business focuses on 4 key areas. The first is HR consulting and outsourcing, and primarily that can be done for small to mid-sized businesses, although we can also do and have done work for larger corporations, project work. But mostly that is offered on a monthly retainer type basis. And I just recently partnered up with a very well-known payroll company to add some ancillary services, HR automation services, so that your HR needs can be met in a single source. So I'm really excited about that because that has been the missing piece in many ways for providing a full service HR program to clients. So now that is resolved. Then secondly, I offer recruiting services to companies that are looking to hire staff, and that can be any position from a regular staff position to executive recruiting function. So C-suite executives. We've done that in the past as well. And so that would encompass creating a job description, posting the job, sourcing, interviewing, and then onboarding and getting the person in the door. So it's a full service recruitment offering. Number 3 is training and development, and it is strictly tied to compliance type issues, harassment, which of course is a huge topic right now. So we do some of that type of training. We can do it via webinar or in-house, and other types of compliance training as well. Employee relations training, new manager training. A lot of you I know are small business owners, and you're just trying to get through the day and you don't focus on that, but that's critically important. It's critically important that your managers know how to manage, know what they're doing, because you're the one that's going to be exposed, have a lot of liability if you just promote somebody who can tactically do the job but doesn't really know what they're doing as far as compliance and labor law and all of those critically important things. And then 4th, we do project work. So projects could entail change management issues, workplace investigations, management, compensation and benefits strategies, design and strategies. So all of those things. A little bit about me, I grew up in the Chicago area. Went to school right down the street at Dominican University. I have a Bachelor of Science in Organizational Leadership, and I am certified by the Human Resource Certification Institute, as well as the Society of Human Resource Management. And that's enough about me. Thank you. Mike?
All right. Good morning, Michael Weicker from Weicker Law Offices in Oak Park. I'll start with the history. So I grew up in Oak Park. Went to Loyola Law School down in the city. Have been in practice since 2013. Starting at all, let's call them like general business practice, general real estate practice firms. I was with a solo in Oak Park where I was the junior associate for 2 years, and he had a number of small business clients. Then I was at a 20-person firm in Oak Brook, doing real estate litigation, but also again general business litigation for a number of small business, slightly larger businesses. In 2013, I started my own firm here, came back to Oak Park where I grew up, had some connections. And somewhere around the time, the last couple of cases, or one big case near the end of my time at the firm in Oak Brook was, I don't know if it was the first, but the first big HR employment type case, a big discrimination case. Beer salesman was suing to keep his job under a disability discrimination case. Actually, I left before I even found out what happened. But it was a question of whether, does a beer salesman have to lift the beer? Yes. The employer said yes. The employee said, "Give me some other job." He liked his job in any event. Handled another case of a woman who got fired the day she came back from FMLA early in my solo practice that I started in 2013. And since then, a number of, I'll come to chamber meetings like this and say I handle general small business matters, and we'll get kind of the troubleshooting, the put out the fires, the small business people probably like yourselves. I think there's a niche, I don't know, in businesses that have 1 to 10 employees. I'm guessing there's kind of a financial hurdle to getting to HR people or getting to a larger firm, or certainly I don't think a 2-person company has an HR department usually, so they end up calling me with some sort of problem. And I'll say, I'll help you as best I can. I've done some, a variety of employment law related things. So it becomes point by point troubleshooting as opposed to I don't have too many people come in and say, I want to draft an employee handbook and do an employee audit. At the last firm we did some of that, but now it's kind of just putting out fires. So I came up with a couple of the just sort of tips right off the top. If somebody came in and said I'm starting a small business, right off the top I would say hire a payroll company. I think every third small business that I meet has an IRS tax liability because they don't get the gist of having to make the deposits that you owe an employer share for taxes. So just outsource it, whatever it is, $20, $50, $100 a month, just pay the payroll company. I think I talked to a hair salon, and he said, I make the deposit every 2 days, or I know it wasn't 2 days, it was 7 days, because he just didn't want to have to come up with that big chunk of money. And like I said, I know several people with a liability. I'll tell the joke. My uncle called me, he ran a small manufacturing business. He said, Michael, I was looking for a good lawyer, but I couldn't find one, so I called you. And I've got an employee, it's day 28, and I don't think he's going to work out. Is there really a 30-day rule? Our IDES person can chime in here, but I did a little bit of research, built in a little bit of money, and said, yes, there is a case out there, at least that I found 3 or 4 years ago, a case that says there is a, I don't know if it's explicit in the rules, but there's a hurdle at 30 days that then, let me state this, if an employee is employed with you on the 30th day or on the 31st day, and then you fire them, they are eligible on your unemployment account as opposed to their prior employer. Maybe you can chime in with the details. Another question that, and this kind of feeds into the discrimination questions, is Illinois an at-will employment state? And even having done several discrimination cases, I just pulled up the Westlaw Legal Research and typed in, is Illinois an at-will employment state? And the answer was similar to what I had in my head was, yes, but. So in theory, you can hire or fire, so you can fire someone for no reason at all, but the exceptions and regulations have almost swallowed the rule that it has to be not against public policy. You can't get in the way of the Human Rights Act, which has all manner of discrimination. I have to hear somewhere, race, color, religion, sex, military status, ancestry, order, sexual orientation. There's a number of things that you cannot discriminate on. So there's questions of, even though you say you have no reason, does the employee think that you have a negative reason? Maybe.
You have about 1 more minute.
Then I will wrap up. That's what I. One more comment. It's interesting that I think I get questions. People will come and put out fires, and so there's the legal. Employers will think, oh, what are the rules? How am I following the rules? But I'm thinking in terms of your bottom line. You might. The other members of the panel probably have a bigger impact, having been an employer of 1 and 2 and 3 employees over the last several years, 5 years of my practice. The motivating your employees, picking the right employees probably has a huge, for me, it's had a huge, you think, okay, I want to comply with the little ticky-tack rules, or not maybe big rules. But the management point is going to maybe have a bigger impact on your work life going forward, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, am I following the rules?" So.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say, Mike, I'm not an attorney, but we did want to say that what we're bringing to you today is just experience and education and our own reflections. And so it is not legal advice.
It's not legal
Did
advice.
Did you get that on tape? Okay.
Just general hypothetical situations.
Right. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Case study.
Disclaimer, thank you. And I had a question for Sherry really quickly, just before we get to Jeff, and it probably isn't that simple of an answer, but for small business owners, when you're thinking about the 4 focus areas that you have for your business, is there a priority for small business owners and thinking about how should I look at my business and structuring it from these 4 areas that you're talking about? Where should I focus first?
Yeah, I would say certainly for all companies, you should have some relationship, some professional relationship, either with an HR consultancy, an HR services company, and that can be a combination of a payroll HR services company. Don't try to wing it. There are so many, at a minimum, there are so many compliance issues just from a payroll standpoint that you can get into hot water very, very quickly. And I think a lot of you might find that to be a very true statement based on what happened last summer with the minimum wage and the sick leave laws, right? I talked to a number of people who were just absolutely dumbfounded that that was a thing, right? Were not prepared, didn't know because they didn't have a professional alliance with somebody who was regularly tracking that and monitoring that, and that's really critically important. My whole thing is this: when a company starts a new business, they think about accounting and paying their taxes and marketing and how to advertise and social media, and all of those things are important, but what's even more important if you're going to have employees is to have a game plan that is going to keep you from getting into trouble, from stepping off the beam, right?
So an HR partner.
An HR partner of some sort, whether that's, of some sort. So that, to me, it falls under the HR consulting outsourcing thing on a regular basis, some sort of regular, consistent guidance. Right? Yeah. Sure.
Jeff.
Thank you, Mom.
You're on.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Well, I had Senator Harmon's office had called about a month and a half ago indicating that you were going to be doing this, and I think it's a tremendous service. As a small business guy myself, the nuance and the intricacies of UI law in and of itself it's a force you got to navigate through. And when we talked to his office, he said, I've not been to the Oak Park River Forest Chamber yet, And I'd like to give them an overview of the agency and the kind of change that we've managed for the last 3.5, 4 years, what we've done, where we're going through. And if you need to have somebody else come back at a later time, an adjudicator, just to talk about different cases that they see and the nuance of, so you got a tax issue with our department. These are the kinds of things you got to do to resolve. We can bring those kind of folks to you, or an adjudicator. You got a person that filed a claim, you don't like it, you got awarded a benefit, and why? And we can walk you through those kinds of claims processes. We can walk you through the specific, the natty issues involving taxes and things like that. But what I wanted to do is simply, and what I portrayed to Senator Harmon, I'm going to provide an overview of the agency. Because we do touch every business in this state. No matter how big, how small, you guys have got to be filed with us, either through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which we manage for the federal government, or through our tax department. You know, when I was asked to come, the department had been through a lot of stuff. And I've only been with it for 3 years, but I probably got the oldest department, if you will, in the state. Most of my folks I am losing a ton of my senior leadership to retirement. And there's been a lot of churn there, but the agency before I got there, basically had been cut by the federal government administrative funds almost 40%. And we went from 1,800 employees down to 1,100. We went from 76 local offices to 26 local offices. You know, our funding went from 240 million to 193 million. And that all happened before the state went into its downturn. So my agency was really the only agency that really had any major layoffs in the state in the whole period leading up to 2012, 2013, to the crisis that we just had. So that's a context for the kind of change that they had gone through. And I never criticized them for that. I would hate to have been a director at the Department of Employment Security when you're doing those kinds of changes. And it's simply making the agency meet the resource, period. I've had the luxury of stable funding, still 190 million roughly, still 1,150 people. But I had the luxury of making the agency fit its mission at that lower level. And we've done a number of things. We submitted a turnaround plan to Governor Rauner shortly after I was able to get my leadership team in place, and we had assayed the functions that had been depleted in the previous 4 years. We came up with 5 strategic initiatives, and one of them involved taxes. I mean, for those of you, you all pay your taxes to us. We had 280 people in our tax division before the layoffs started. We were down to 151 when I came in. How do you manage the system, especially on old legacy technologies, with better than a third fewer people? And the people that were there were all busy. So one of the big initiatives we put in place was a brand new tax system. It took us 18 months to put that into place, but we went live in September 11th of last year. And so now your unemployment insurance taxes, you can go online to the Department of Revenue site, which we upgraded for them. We upgraded their entire technology so we could put the most modern unemployment insurance tax system in place. And that is now in place. You can do so many more things electronically. I don't need to have 280 people doing the stuff. I came in the first week. I walked through the Chicago office. There were boxes of unopened mail that were in this cubicle from floor to ceiling, and it was employer stuff. You just can't have that. So one of the major initiatives was taxes. Another major initiative was our human resource function. When you're cutting, you want your front facing, especially if you're political. You want your front facing stuff to be as good as it can be, and you're going to deplete your back office. Well, procurement took a huge hit. Processes, we had a whole division just doing processes. documenting what we do, we stopped that. Or they stopped it under the previous, because of the layoffs. We had a huge human resource function, a huge accounting function. They just broadcloth cut. And so we put in a whole new accounting system. And that was about an 18 to 24 month process. It's still not clean. It's still not where I want it to be. But it's brand new. We're still doing some conversions. That's working fine. We have a huge, we started an anti-fraud initiative. I mean, you can only imagine, if you're running a $2 billion trust fund, you're collecting, you're pushing out $2 billion in benefits to claimants all over the state. You're collecting taxes from 340,000 employers all over this state. And you're trying to match them. It's an insurance system, so you're trying to, if this employer's got this kind of experience with unemployment insurance, they're going to pay a higher tax. So you're trying to manage all of that basically on 1980s technologies. Well, we've spent a lot of money upgrading all of those things. And we will be finishing the last major upgrade on that in March of 2019. But the bottom line is, managing a system that big, just the accounting of it, is huge. And your patience on the tax side as we were converting to the new system was awesome. The benefits side, we've cleaned that up a lot, and we're still moving toward that. What I wanted to come to you with is, we finished the tax piece. We're 85% finished on the benefits side. We've upgraded our Bureau of Labor Statistics information system, so we're not just putting out unemployment insurance reports anymore saying this month the state of Illinois dropped from 4.8% to 4.7%, or that's the typical data, and we're required to put that out. What we've done in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I get 6 million records every quarter from all of you. These are wage and employment records. And they've been sitting there, and we've been using them for the unemployment data. What we've done, and this is first in the country kind of stuff, we've taken our data and cross-matched it against completer data from high schools like River Forest Oak Park. And we can show you, or we will be able to show you in August when we release this piece. This is what's happened with your graduates from the years of 2003 to 2007. This is where they went to school. We can't get it to the individuals. This is in the aggregate, okay? Because it's all, we got confidentiality stuff on my side and on the education side. The bottom line is, in the aggregate, we can show you what happens to your kids coming out of these schools and the kind of program that you've got, and what kind of experience they've had, both from a further schooling side or from a wage and employment side. And it's exciting stuff. It should inform what your curriculum is, not just in your high school, but in your grade schools and junior highs. It's groundbreaking stuff. And we will be releasing that in August. We've got a brand new piece that we coupled with completer data from the Board of Higher Education, so I can show you what a history major at U of I is likely to make and what kind of employment path they're going to have. And I won't say this, you can do the math though. You get the loans there, how can you pay them off with a social worker degree there? I don't know. But those, so we're moving big time in that area. I guess the last piece that I'm going to be asking employers to really help us with is we've doubled down on fraud. A $2 billion system, we put in cross matches. Nobody in jail is going to be drawing unemployment insurance, okay? Nobody that died is going to be drawing unemployment insurance. We've done cross matches on social security numbers, we've done it on prison inmates. We get new hire data from you. So the minute we get that goes into our system. If somebody's trying to draw an unemployment check at the same time he's drawing a wage from you, there are some instances when they can do that, but for the most part they shouldn't. And we're identifying those folks and we're doubling down on that. How am I doing here? I've got 4 minutes still. Here's what, that is still a huge we've upgraded our technology. We do new hire cross match, prison cross match, Social Security cross match. We match at the front end. Somebody applies for an unemployment benefit. We do a Secretary of State cross match. I mean, if you want to apply for unemployment, how do we know you're who you are? Well, we require you to put the weight that you have on your driver's license on your unemployment insurance application, and we cross match that against. And if it's within X, we got the algorithm. If it's too much, too little, you're flagged and you're questioned, and we have a whole group of folks that call folks up to make sure you're who you are. We now, for employers of over 25 employees, we require a monthly wage and employment report. For everybody under 25 employees, like you guys, it's a quarterly report. But we get 340,000 of those every quarter. It's extraordinary, and we use those to cross-match so that we can make sure that if we're paying out a benefit, it's the right amount, it's going to the right person, and it's a real person. And it's still, so the technology's there, but it's still, I've got to get the employer community using it, okay? We have a statewide information data exchange system that has been developed nationally by our national association. We've got about 25,000 of our 340,000 employers now that are using it to file notice of claims. When a person draws from you or wants to draw from you, they come to our office, they put in an application. We send out in the mail to you right now a notice of claim. This person has filed an unemployment claim against you. Do you protest or do you not? Okay, the mail itself takes 3 to 5 days for us to send it, for you to get it back, and then we have X number of days to process it. If it all works right, you're going to get a good decision. But if the mail doesn't work right, you can protest till you're blue in the face. It's not going to happen. Okay? It'll go to appeals, and then you'll probably get an outcome, but you don't want to go there. The bottom line is we need you to use, I'm going to be encouraging employers all over the state this year to be looking at our side's portal. And it's not just for notice of claims, it's wage verification also. And that's the new feature that we're going to be coming out with in July. I need you to do this though, because just with the stuff we've put in place, we have stopped over 203,000 claims from happening. We've saved over $201 million in our trust fund in the last 4 years. It's big money, and we're only going to get better if you guys can help us. So that's my request to the chamber. I can have more people, other people come out later and talk to you explicitly about how you sign up for electronic notices of claims, electronic wage verification. That'll help my agency meet our need to bring integrity, more integrity to the system. And I'm telling you, we've already done a lot of it. That's it.
Jeff, I had a question. We've had some situations where that notice of claim, for whatever reason, didn't arrive yet, and then we found out that there was a claim in place. Did you say there's a system now where we can go online and see if there's anything active?
Absolutely.
There is.
Absolutely.
So if I had my HR person, say on a weekly basis, just go to the IDS website and see, is there anything coming up for us?
You could actually do better than that. You could sign up for it. We would send it to your HR person. They'd have it automatically. And when they return it, if they say denied, you've got an electronic record of it that is defensible against anything that we could bring against you. Okay? Yeah. So Bob, somebody's going to have to get me your card, and I will have somebody get in touch with you. Okay? Anna? Yeah. Maya's going to get your card.
That's what I call service.
Anybody else? Come on, bring it on. Yeah.
I have a question more about the procedure of unemployment.
Yeah.
So, I'll just give you my situation. I had an employee I had to fire for stealing.
Okay.
And she filed an unemployment claim. And I had to fight it. Get evidence, and there was a telephone thing. I don't understand. We pay unemployment insurance.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody claims unemployment and gets it,
If they get unemployment, your experience rated, and your unemployment rate next year is going to go up. And if you're a small employer, it's going to go up dramatically. I mean, that was one of the reasons I got involved in politics in the first place. So you should challenge it if it's legitimate. And if you're going to challenge, number one, you should have procedures, an employee handbook, right, Mike? Okay. And you should follow those procedures, and you should document that you follow those procedures. Here's the rule, and you're going to hate this. You can fire anybody, but if you don't want them to get unemployment insurance, you've got to document why they shouldn't get it. And we do have hearings, and it's an intricate hearing process. It's getting better every year. And I'm not going to say it's employer friendly or claimant friendly. It is, we've got some 70 years of court cases, as well as 70 years of rules and regulations and law that we've got to follow. And so yes, you have a direct, if it's a wrong claim, you have a responsibility to challenge. And I would hope you do it, and I would hope that you would, after you've had that experience with our system, if you have some suggestions on how we can improve it, I want it. Okay?
Well, I have two questions.
Wait a minute.
So,
You gave me one.
No double check.
Just quick. So the financial responsibility for us as a business owner would be that our insurance would go up.
Yep.
It wouldn't be that we have to pay X amount each month
No.
or whatever.
If you're a not-for-profit, you're not paying taxes into my system, and you will be charged dollar for dollar, whatever the benefits are that are drawn. So if any of you are not-for-profits here, you got to really follow that stuff.
And are we penalized if somebody claims unemployment but they lose? I mean,
No,
is there no effect?
absolutely not. If they claim unemployment and they're denied the claim, you are not charged. And that's important. And let me say something else, because I didn't mean to gloss over this. One of the other things the governor wanted me to do, we had borrowed $1.5 billion when we went into the recession, and we still had $963 million to repay. My agency did when we came in. We paid that entire amount off last July. So we are not in debt. Our system is absolutely robust, and we got a $1.5 billion trust fund balance today. And on top of which, and you need to know this, we will be, with this contribution rate we just came out, we don't call them taxes, by the way. Your payment to us is a contribution to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. It's not a tax. And so thank you very much. But I want you to know, your contribution this year is about $780 million less than it was the last year of the previous administration. Your taxes have gone down, and they've gone down significantly. And nobody knows that, nobody sees it. In the aggregate, it may be a few $100s here from each of your companies. But when you got 340,000 of those out there, in the aggregate, we're assessing $780 million less than you were assessed 4 years ago.
So how does the new tax law play into the IDE?
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
I mean,
It's
we
not
are
gonna
our
have any
own
effect?
system, and your taxes go into this insurance fund.
Okay.
And it has no effect on us,
Huh.
that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah.
How well is that 1.5 billion walled off from the rest of the state? If we're attempting to dip into it,
It is
seriously?
a lockbox.
Okay, a real lockbox, unlike Social Security.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with that. It's not a state fund. It's a federal trust fund. And so they do use it at the federal level to offset deficits in their.
So it's not one.
Yeah, well, it's,
Like Social Security.
as a result, if we go in another recession, and we will be going in, this is what, 8 years since the recovery quote began? Worst recovery ever, by the way.
Yeah.
Our employment growth has been nil as a state. But if we go back into another recession, and I would anticipate we probably will within the next 2 years, it's not gonna be pretty. Because they'll have to appropriate real dollars to us. They're talking about charging us monies if they give us back our trust fund in advance when we have those deficits. So it's gonna be tough. But right now, it's good. We're putting in place systems that ought to be able to manage that kind of a trough. And your taxes will go up if that trough hits again. Okay? Yes?
Can you speak to a business that's trying to cut corners, and I open this up to the whole panel, that hires independent contractors who are actually de facto employees? And the second part to my question is, I'm an honest business with employees who pay into the system. Hypothetically speaking, if I know of a business that is doing this, is there anything I can do? Molly, can you repeat for?
The question is, independent contractors as employees. And that is a huge problem all over the state. And I've got a tax division that is absolutely on top of that stuff. You've got somebody you suspect is using independent contractors improperly, you gotta tell us, and and we do put that into audits. We also get 1099s from every person that gets them from the IRS. We get 1099s, and we identify businesses that look like they're abusers. But you gotta understand, this new economy is really testing us. Is an Uber driver an independent contractor? Especially if they're laid off, if they're terminated by Uber for not meeting whatever standard. And I think we've got a lot of case law that would indicate it's not. But it goes, I mean, you think of all of the new economy, it's causing us to re-examine decisions that have been made 50 years ago as to what an independent contractor is or is not. So it's getting grayer, even though we've got 70 plus years of case law that guide us. And
you know about the 20-factor test, right? The IRS test.
I do.
Okay,
That's
because
why
I don't know
hired
that a lot
employees.
necessarily a lot of people do, but I mean, you can definitely determine based on those guidelines whether, or should be, right? It is a little bit of a wavy line right now, whether the person is an independent contractor or would be considered an employee.
And Jeff, I know you
really
need
pay
to go,
attention
so
to
I'm gonna
that.
be mindful
I've got
of
my
your time.
quarterly board meeting at 10
Yes.
o'clock in the city,
Yeah.
and I hate it because this is the kind of stuff I love to have. One more question.
Okay.
Is that, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Watch
Thank
it.
you.
You're going to get an audit someday if somebody says, "Hey, she's
Right.
okay." And we do 10% of our audits are random anyway, so you may get an audit.
So, just a quick question. If you are seemingly in an endless loop of communication with your department, do you have a place to go?
Call me.
There you go.
We stop loops.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wish I could see this whole thing. These are the experts. These are on the ground. So, but thank you for inviting me, and be sure to thank Senator Harmon for asking me to do this too. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. So, I'd love to know if you all are ready to start asking some questions of the panel. I have a whole slew of questions, but I wonder if you're ready to rock. Yeah? Okay, good. So let's do it.
I'm Peter from the Careful Peach Boutique. I have two questions. The first one would be, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for online tools for to begin the HR issues that small businesses may have before we contact somebody with your expertise? And are there any free or inexpensive think tanks or places, resources to go to start that? Because I know that for a lot of us, bringing in a consultant obviously bottom line is it costs money and we're trying to do everything else. So do you have any suggestions for those two questions?
Sure. So,
Absolutely.
can I just repeat the question?
Sure.
So the first question is, are there online tools that we can use for HR resources?
Yeah.
And the second question is around consultants or not necessarily having the resources to invest in consultants like this. What are the possibilities?
If I may, just real quickly, that's an excellent question, both of them are. Free resources. There are some books, you can start with books, you can go to your library, what have you. There are a couple of books back here that talk a bit about the beginning journey, if you will, with regard to kind of engagement, which leads into the kind of HR discussion that you're talking about. I know Sherry's going to have some other thoughts as well. But there are a number of, I think, valuable tools that talk about, and again, I'm talking about it from the perspective of engagement, that really kind of look at how folks are starting, how you can start evaluating your staff, how you can really kind of start positioning yourself to kind of have folks starting to buy into that vision that you were talking about, that I was talking about earlier. What comes to mind as an example are assessments such as Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, DISC. There's also a Gallup has a what's called a Q12 engagement survey that really is a good way to kind of understand where your employees are, so you can start beginning the beginnings of a game plan with respect to that engagement piece. As I mentioned, there are a couple of books back there, including Winning Cultures and Winning Teams. A few others that I think might be helpful as well. But Sherry, I think you probably have some other thoughts as well.
All of that is really, really important as you build and grow your staff, employee engagement, and having the right culture signals, and all of those things are very, very important. But I think what you're talking about is more from, I'm not absolutely 100% sure we're following all the compliance rules, and there's so much information, and I feel overwhelmed, right? From that standpoint, from making sure that you're not asking the wrong interview questions, making sure that you're having all the proper taxes and things taken out, more along the compliance line.
Yes,
Am I
yes,
correct?
and yes.
Yes. Right, and so that's, why would you know, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's impossible. So there's a plethora of online sources that you can look things up and get. You probably can get, a good deal of information just online, but it takes time. You got to sort through it. There's no single source that I know of online that aggregates all of that information. So that's the problem. So my advice to you is this, and I get it, like, we really are running on a very thin margin, but what if something did happen? The money that it would cost you to get yourself out of a lawsuit over something even frivolous could be really enormous, right? And so for the peace of mind, I think maybe the HR payroll, having that done professionally, I think maybe you think it's more expensive than it actually could be.
That's not an issue where I was going with. It's more of employee issues, like let's say what happened over there.
Right. But
you
it
don't
is
know
part of
what's
that.
going to come up. It's never happened in 10 years, and all of a
Sure.
sudden somebody's doing this.
But that's my point. So when I say payroll, what I really mean is an HR service company that can also offer payroll services, right? But professional help, so that you're not in the dark, kind of bumbling around trying to figure it out as you go. The HR services, like a monthly, regular, consistent service, is probably in your head more expensive than you think, right? There are a lot of companies out there now that have automation that can supply you with an answer to something that you could spend hours or days on trying to figure out, and maybe still not be completely confident that you're handling it correctly. You could have an answer in 3 minutes,
Well, compliance, I'm not worried about. It's more of the human resources issue or the liability when we're talking about, is this still a right to work state?
But that's
What are my-
compliance. That is
Huh?
compliance.
Well, right, but I'm talking, I've had payroll services before, and basically, I'm calling in hours and numbers, and then they tell me, and then they bill me, and it's for a small business. I get that, and it's easy enough. I have an accounting firm, so between the two of us, I can do the state compliance.
One of the things you
But now they offer like a full array of services. They don't do an either or. They do everything, and it's all automated. That's the key, and at a much lower price point than you think.
How do you do an automation when it's like case by case issues of?
Because this is not their first rodeo. You are one of millions of business owners, right? So they aggregate all the state and federal laws, and there are algorithms to supply answers to all of these questions, which seem very unique to you, but are not unique at all.
So I just want to recap, and then we'll,
Sure.
because we're going to be around to answer questions
Yep.
afterward too. But what I hear Sherry say is that there are online resources.
Absolutely.
And that it may be that it feels overwhelming right now in terms of dollars out, but prioritizing the investment in some sort of HR
Right.
endeavor
You should shop it.
to protect. Okay. Wait, you went already? I'm just
I've
kidding.
got like 10 more and this might be for John, but practically speaking, under what circumstances is an employee entitled to get unemployment insurance? Do they have to work X amount of hours? How long do they have to
They
work?
do, yeah, and off the top of my head, I could not tell you, but yes, it is tied to a threshold, a number of hours per quarter, and it's a little more complicated than what I just said, but it's not, so if somebody works 2 days, and this happens a lot, and then quits and goes and files an unemployment claim, of course you should protest that, right? But yes, to answer your question simply, all of that is tied, unemployment insurance is tied to a threshold, which includes number of hours, and the last what are the 2 quarters work, so yes, so you have to be aware of that. Definitely. One thing I will say about, and he did mention this, but really quickly, the one thing that gets people in trouble with unemployment, this is the key, this is what we keep coming back to, is if you don't have written documentation where in your case, Callie, where somebody stole from you, that's a different deal. But in general, a lot of employers get dinged with paying unemployment insurance because they don't have procedures in place. There's something going on within the relationship, and the employer either they don't say anything, or they admit it, or they don't document it. And if you don't have any documentation, if you go to appeal that case, you're going to get on the phone with the person who's going to make a ruling on that. And if there's nothing that shows that you made a good faith effort to counsel this employee and to document it, and you can prove that you documented it and you followed up, you're gonna lose. I mean, that's just the way it is. So you can't just fly by the seat of your pants. You have to, this is why employee policy managers and all that stuff that people don't want to get involved in, really at the end of the day end up saving you lots of money. Although you think that it's an expenditure, it's an insurance policy.
If I could just add really quickly, I think
Yeah.
the documentation aspect of compliance goes across the board. It's not
Absolutely.
just at the pure compliance and tax related
Right.
level. In the engagement level as well, you want to be able to kind of document your progress as it relates to the development of your individuals, so that you can have that game planning. So I think Sherry talked about it in another context, but the planning ahead is really, really important, and that documentation is going to be a real asset for you as you move ahead into this.
So Mike, can you just,
Well, if you had a question,
I do have a
had a comment. Well, it's like kind of should you put things in writing? I feel like my starting point was kind of the grizzly old factory manager who doesn't want to put it in. It's a small business person, they got 20 employees, and you'll hear these kind of war stories and say, well, I don't put anything down because they don't want to be held to it. And that's kind of correct. It's like if you put something in writing, yes, put it in writing, but you're gonna be held to putting something in writing. You know, like an employment or an employee handbook kind of thrown together. In my quick search on, at will employment, I found a case that an employment handbook is going to work a little bit like an employment contract. They're at will, but you're gonna have to follow the rules. I think the article that popped up was, can I fire them without a written notice? And somewhere on page 39 of the employment handbook said you need to give, 1 week written notice before termination. And they said, nope, employer's gonna be held to that. So it's kind of like a put in writing, and that's what most of the panel's gonna say. Yes, let's put a lot of stuff in writing, but be careful.
Right. Use common sense with it. Don't put opinions. I can't stand this person. I wish they were this way. Right. However you document, always keep in the back of your mind that this could show up in
Everything is public. Everything
right.
is public.
Always keep that in mind. Be professional. Be concise.
So Mike, talk about the importance of an employee handbook. I mean, we've thrown that around a lot, but in terms of, we're a small business, does it really matter? Let's say we're managing 2 people. Does it matter?
I would just say as just start on a very low practical level. What are their hours? What's our yearly holiday schedule? What's the dress code? It might just be a 1-page Word doc to start, and then expand from there. I'm guessing in the 1 to 5 employees, the benefits are kind of a vague issue, but maybe you want to say, well, geez, I don't want to pay this person's health insurance on day 1 when I don't know if they're going to work out. Maybe that's a 3-month or a 6-month. And I went through this in the last 2 or 3 years when I hired staff people, employees, and attorney. I think under 5 or 10 employees, generally you're pretty safe. Offering when do they come into the 401k, when do they come into the benefits. You write down a practical rule and stare at it and ask somebody, does this make sense? Does this trigger any obvious rule? And you're probably safe. You're going to be held to it. Now, just as a quick fun story on the employment, the employee may be held to it as well. I have a relative, ran a small business, fired someone for cause. They filed an unemployment claim, or maybe it was a discrimination claim, and they brought the employee's Christmas card to the hearing that said, you've been the greatest employee ever, it's really great, and the case was thrown right out. So to keep it in mind, both ways, maybe it was 2 or 3 years of Christmas cards, but it was very glowing praise for the employee, or for the employers, as in them. And I guess employee of the month is the same thing. Someone said,
Right.
if you're going to, if you're thinking business is going to turn down, you may not want to give someone a glowing review right before they need the cuts.
Yeah, consistency.
And this again gets to this notion of your vision as a company, as a going concern. Whether it's a 1-page Word document that kind of documents kind of the general guidelines, it's in effect kind of a reflection of who you are and who you want to be as a company.
Right.
And so as you start thinking more critically about what you are in the marketplace, what kind of company, what kind of personality, if you will, your company has, that can help kind of fill in those blanks with respect to an employment document.
So we have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap up. And I know we have someone that wants to speak with us just briefly. So,
do you guys have any suggestions of places we can go just to kind of get some quick overview of do's and don'ts from an HR perspective? And we talked about some online tools. Here's a situation that I just want to safeguard myself against. We do have 20-something employees, and so most of them are really young, coming in with a lot of, we're the first experience, except for 1 or 2, right, who have the skill set that I might bring in for a specific skill. And there's certain limitations on what you can ask as you are interviewing them and as you hire them. When someone comes in and they are on unemployment, and you can't ask that question, and then you get hit with their unemployment, what can you do to safeguard yourself against something like that?
did everybody hear that question?
So they're currently on unemployment.
They were on unemployment, I hired them.
Yeah.
There were limitations in which she wanted to work.
Yeah.
And then the moment she went over that threshold, she wanted to work only under that so she could continue her unemployment and work for me, right? So now I'm learning that. And then she went over that threshold of hours and I then became responsible for her unemployment.
To be very honest with you, that's kind of a one-on-one kind of we can talk offline, but that's not really
It's not something that could happen again and again, like I worry about.
Well, I don't know about that, but,
I was just gonna say, it does sound like a one-on-one scenario, but
Yeah.
going forward, to kind of safeguard yourself as it relates to kind of future potential employees, kind of looking at how you're interviewing folks. There are a number of organizations that are adopting behavioral interview styles so that it's fairly straightforward, and it's not based so much on one's gut or one's kind of initial appeal, but there are standard kinds of behavioral assessment questions that you can ask. I'm familiar with the STAR kind of format that kind of allows for you to kind of be a bit more regimented in terms of how you are evaluating your folks. But again, that does sound like a bit of
And
a...
it's coursework that institutions don't handle, but I just worry about that having
In the
again.
future.
Just as a kind of a class that assess
So-
any of my managers that do any of the hiring.
Well, certainly there are a number of classes that I imagine you could do. What I was referring to is one of several behavioral methods that folks use to interview folks. The companies or organizations use to interview. The STAR method, for example, is one of those. There are several others that I could probably give to you as well.
So-
The other follow-up on that point, if you're interviewing someone who's on unemployment, you want to confirm this with your accountant, but you may be eligible for a workers' opportunity tax credit for that person, which may offset that whole reason for that person being on unemployment in the first place, and plus you get a tax benefit that way. So just confirm that with your accountant, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the classifications where, if someone is on unemployment, you hire them, you get a tax benefit for that. And it can also benefit the employee, obviously.
So thank you, everyone. This clearly went by way too quickly. We're going to be hanging around for a little bit after this, so if you do have additional questions. But I do have some takeaways that from each individual that I think are important, that capture some main points. So Sherry told us, don't try to wing it. Don't try to wing it. Invest in your HR. Get the support out of the gate. Alejandro told us vision is essential. It's who you are, so define it. Jeff told us you cannot get paid if you go to jail or die. So don't try it. No, but what he did say was you can fire people, just track it, document it. And Mike told us more of that, just document. Employee handbook is important. So thank you so much to all the panelists, Jeff, too. And